We're on.
Hello, everyone. It's Alan Shimel, DevOps.com, and thanks for joining us today for a very special Google Hangout YouTube Live event in partnership with the folks at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, DOES. And we have a great panel discussion today ahead of DOES London, which is June 25th, 26th at the Intercontinental London, the O2. And for more information about DOES London, please visit events.itrevolution.com. The full conference agenda is now live, and having been to I think just about every DOES event that's been thrown, I'll tell you, the lineup this year rivals any I've seen anywhere. So without wasting a lot of time, though, let's get into our hangout today. Let me introduce you to a great panel of folks. We have Gene Kim, of course. Gene, welcome. Thanks for being here. And we have Chris Hill, head of systems engineering, infotainment, Jaguar Land Rover.
Hello.
Hi, Chris. We have Jeff Gallimore, who's a partner at Excella. Jeff.
Hey, Alan.
Thank you for coming. And the one and only Damon Edwards, co-founder of Rundeck. Damon, welcome.
Hey, Alan. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Hey, I think we've prepared a slide deck that we're going to try to follow today.
Yeah, exactly. Jeremy, if you can go to slide 3. Is that right? Yeah. So let's talk about the purpose of this webinar is I want to share with you kind of some of the thinking that goes behind putting on a conference like DevOps Enterprise. And what I wanted to share with you is some of the program objectives that we had laid out for DevOps Enterprise London. The first is I think really DevOps Enterprise started as showing and showcasing experience reports from technology leaders, sharing their stories, the business problems they set out to solve, what they did, what they learned, and their outcomes, and specifically repeat experience reports, following them through time year over year and seeing where their journey goes, just like a documentary film, chronicling the journeys of these leaders. One of the things that we'll talk about today is a new focus for the DevOps Enterprise Summit, and this was championed by Damon Edwards, who's on the program committee, and Jason Cox from Disney, really focusing on the need to explore what the next generation of operations and infrastructure organizations and practices look like. And that's something I'm super excited about. And this is a multi-year journey for us, the first of which is now London. We're going to be talking about what we're doing differently in London to help conference attendees achieve their goals. We'll talk about something I'm super excited about, which is pointing out how the barriers for these technology leaders often leave the kind of classic technology value stream. It's not just dev versus ops. Now, the technology value stream as it pertains to project management, the funding model, information security, product owners and product managers. And so we have some amazing talks and experts presenting in London. And then also we're also actively seek the subject matter experts from the domains that we need help in. So this has been a tradition at DevOps Enterprise from the beginning in 2014. So we'll go through all of those in turn. On the next slide, one of the things I really want to acknowledge is the programming committee. I'm so privileged. I get to work with these people. Not only are they experts in their own domains, but I think one of the things that's so delightful is that we're all, as Damon says, semi-professional conference goers. And so to have these people talk so passionately about what goes wrong in conferences and to have so many good ideas about what we can do to overcome them is something that's just been the value I can't overstate. So I want to acknowledge all this thinking has gone on. So on the next slide, the first segment is really about, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So before we do that and have Jeff talk to attendee outcomes, let's just do a brief round robin introduction for everybody. So I'll call on you. And if you could just briefly say your name, company role, and share briefly what has made the DevOps Enterprise Summit worthwhile for you over the years. And is there anything particular that you're looking forward to? So let's start with Damon. I'll call you, then Chris Hill and Jeff. Damon.
Sorry, me? Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
Damon Edwards, the co-founder of Rundeck, and why I like, that's question number 2, is why I like the DevOps Enterprise Summit. Gene? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So
you're looking forward to,
yeah. I mean, I said I've been to a lot of conferences. I've been involved with, as one of the organizers of the first DevOps days in the U.S. And so I've been involved in the DevOps movement from the very early days. Also been involved in the operations side, and I just feel like it's the most consistently high quality gathering of people of any conference that I've ever been to. So that's why I work as a volunteer for Gene to help as much as I can with that. And it's I think the conference presentations are good, but also the people in the audience. Being able to talk to so many people from so many real diverse huge and enterprises of all sizes, and be able to understand what makes them tick. It's just a wealth of knowledge at every turn. So I'm a fan.
And I'm a fan of you, Damon. In fact, I just want to acknowledge some of the most startling insights and comments, that inform the conference direction. They've consistently come from you. Chris Hill, let's go to you.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Chris Hill, the head of systems engineering for Jaguar Land Rover. So DevOps Enterprise Summit, for me, I hold close to my heart, considering I attended my first one in 2016 in San Francisco, and I walked away from that conference with the books and the motivation I needed to transform my organization. So in terms of how we've started with our DevOps transformation within JLR, this actually came organically from the conference. Now, I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it's true. I didn't actually have the direction I needed until I attended it for my first time. Since then, I've attended 4. I've enjoyed every single one of them. What I'm looking for mostly this year is where to go next. Sometimes I find myself deep in the trenches, especially lately, and being able to get away and actually think about where to go next and see where other enterprises go next has a tremendous amount of value to me and my business. So looking forward to it.
That's awesome, Chris. And it has been awesome being able to see where that journey has taken you. And you moved. We'll be talking more about your journey, but your talk is one of the ones that I'm just so excited. In fact, you'll be the first talk of the entire conference. So
yeah, that'll be great. I'll just kick us off. It'll be awesome.
And it's really taking you into one of the most strategic programs inside of Jaguar Land Rover. So that's we'll be talking more about that later. All right, Jeff Gallimore, let's do you next.
Yeah. So Jeff Gallimore, I'm a partner and co-founder at Excella, and straight off, the DevOps Enterprise Summit is my favorite conference of the year. It's my favorite event of the year, and the way that I measure a great conference for me is that I leave the conference in this weird state of being both totally excited and energized and totally exhausted at the same time. And at every summit that I've been to, I leave that way. And the reason for that is I am learning so much from the speakers, and I am learning so much from the other attendees and the conversations that I have, that it makes me really, really excited about going back to my day job and with the people that I work with and the clients that we have, and talking to them about the possibilities and the ideas and the opportunities that they have in front of them, with real evidence that these things can be done and that they are possible, that this isn't just pie in the sky academic theoretical stuff, that there are actually people in the wild doing these things with great results. And so it lends credibility and confidence to those sorts of discussions, to the point where the people that I'm talking to now go, oh, okay. And then we can actually put those things into practice and have a real impact on their organizations and the people that work in them.
Awesome. That's great. In fact, let's talk about, and so let me talk about a problem that we were facing in the programming committee for years. And thanks to you, Jeff, we're actually doing something meaningful about it. So one of the things that I think we've all discussed in the programming committee for years is that, I think we've all been in situations where we go to a conference, and there's kind of 3 phenomena that come to mind. One is sort of the velvet rope phenomenon, where you go and there's there's a group of people that you really want to talk to, but you can't get to them. Not necessarily because there's a bouncer preventing you from getting there, but it's just very hard to get to those people that you want to talk to. There's other situations you're surrounded by people, but you don't know who you actually should be talking to. So I know maybe a decade ago, there are times where I just decided that the best use of my time was to go to my hotel room and do email, which was the dumbest thing to do. Right. And the third is, you say everyone's going to lunch and they're organizing by restaurant names, but what you really want is, you want to know what these people are going to be talking about. And so, Damon, we've talked about this at length. And so this year, I'm so excited that we're actually going to do something very different this year and in the following conferences. So, Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this is going to be. I hope this is going to be great. I've been, as I've said, I've been a conference goer too, and I've experienced some of these phenomena. So let's see what we can do about addressing them. And so the first one that we want to address is this one, is that when I've been at conferences, I've been sitting in the audience listening to a speaker, and they're saying amazing things that I have questions about, or I want to talk more about, and I want to get more information. I want to dig deeper. The talk ends, and I'm faced with this choice. One is trying to fight through the throng of people that have already gotten up there to the speaker to start talking to them, or miss out on the next session that I want to get to. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some opportunities for the plenary speakers, the people in the morning on each day, to be available to ask questions. To be able to go a little bit deeper on some of the topics and some of the information that they presented. And the way that that's going to work is we're going to use Slack, which we're going to get to a little bit later. So every attendee has the opportunity to submit questions for the speakers. You can upvote, you can enhance, you can even provide your own answers or follow-up questions to some of the questions that the other attendees pose. And then during a moderated panel discussion, we'll feed those questions, those top voted questions, the most interesting questions to the speakers, and they can riff off of those and provide more information to the attendees who attend those Ask the Speaker sessions. So hopefully we'll be able to generate a lot more discussion around around those topics that that those speakers have been presenting on, and give attendees the opportunity to engage with speakers in a different way and give them a different opportunity to have further conversations. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is another at least semi-structured opportunity to engage with other attendees, because again, at least for me as a conference goer, I want to learn from other attendees with different backgrounds and different experiences and different perspectives, and I want to create some opportunities. I want to have opportunities to talk to them so that I can learn from them just as much as I am from the speakers who are presenting. And so one of the opportunities that we're going to have is what's called Lean Coffee, and that's going to be led by Dominica DeGrandis, who is an expert at these Lean Coffee sessions. And so the idea here is that we're going to get probably about 100 people together on both days into groups of 10 at a table, and those tables will be around various topics. So it could be leadership, it could be org design, it could be testing, it could be how to engage with leadership, change management, security and compliance, all kinds of different topics where people of similar interests can get together and start talking about topics and questions and issues that are relevant to them and that group of 10. And at the end of that, every attendee should have learned a lot, should have made some good contacts, and will have the opportunity to post the topics that they talked about into a Slack channel with an opportunity to continue that discussion even after that Lean Coffee session ends. And then yet another option, which is a little bit less structured in terms of facilitation as the Lean Coffee, and that is during lunch. And there will be a couple of lunch options for attendees. One is we're going to have an eat lunch with the speaker, meet the speaker. That will be limited to first come, first serve. And for those people that can get there early and get an opportunity to sit down with the speakers who are opting into that session, will be great. And for others who either don't want to or can't get into that, they can go to have lunch with other attendees. There will be a lot of high top tables that are set out around the lunch buffet areas. With note cards, again, with topics and some seed questions for discussion. So again, very similar topics to what was being talked about in Lean Coffee, but there might be some questions that are on the table so that you can ask your fellow lunchmates there that end up at the same table with you what their experience is and what their thoughts are on all those questions. So just see what comes of that. And then there's obviously the industry party for people who have been to the summit, particularly last year in San Francisco. The industry party in the evening was pretty amazing. So there's book signings, there's chances to talk to some of the sponsors. Obviously, the attendees are going to be there, a lot of them. And so as you're waiting in line to get your book signed by all those authors, again, a lot of great opportunities to have conversations with the people who are in line right next to you getting the same book signed. So I heard a lot of great stories, and I was part of that last year. And then the final I think really cool thing that we're going to do this year is have a Slack workspace for the conference, for the summit. And so every attendee has the opportunity to be onboarded into the Slack workspace. There will be opportunity to interact with other attendees, with the sponsors, with the speakers during Lean Coffee. There's going to be a hiring channel. Obviously, there's going to be the general channel for other types of things. But we're going to have a Slack instance so that not only can attendees interact with the speakers and with other attendees during the conference, well, you'll also have that workspace available to you after the conference ends. So if you want to continue discussions and continue the relationships after the event ends, you have the opportunity to do that. So that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and thanks for that description, Damon. Chris, can you respond?
Well, I mean, I think the idea here is to make everyone's conference experience the most high value as possible. And I think that content's easy to come by. You can watch them on the internet. You can get them all over the place. But being able to interact with folks, right? Being able to tell your ideas and bounce them off people and ask specific pointed questions. That's often, I think, you ask people, that's the difference between winning and losing for their conference experience. And I think that's really what we're trying to do here is provide as many avenues. And I think we can, well, in the future, we'll keep providing more to act and get that point-to-point communication going about their small group communication about the topics that they care about. And, I think that's because the quality of the audience is what I've been told consistently is what separates, and I believe it's true, the DevOps Enterprise Summit from other conferences.
Chris, I'm hoping this will hopefully even improve the experience for you. Hopefully it doesn't diminish the experience.
Yeah, this will be great. I actually had no idea what Lean Coffee was until I attended my first DOES Summit, and I'm not a coffee drinker, so I'm surprised I even walked into the room. Since I've been to that, I've held them within my own organization, and it's a tremendously good way to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, but also make sure democratically that you're talking about things that everyone is interested in. So the conversation almost drives itself to where it needs to go without any sort of mediation. So I'm actually really looking forward to those Lean Coffees, and I think the other opportunities are going to be great for us to maybe cut some of the friction between somebody who thinks that, oh, I can't, talk to the speaker because there's a big line in there, and maybe I haven't seen the speaker for the rest of the conference, but there's really something important that I needed to ask them. I think this will be great.
Yeah, and just one of the things that over the years, a phrase that just keeps coming to mind is, the goal is to create the conditions where the right serendipitous interactions happen. And I think that's where the magic happens. And Damon, as you said, anyone can watch a talk or video, on a YouTube video. But I think so much of the magic of a conference is that you have like-minded thinkers from different, slightly different contexts, sometimes wildly different contexts, and that's where the magic collaborations can, spontaneously happen. So I think that's one of our hopes for this. Great. Anything else on this that you want to share, Jeff, or from panelists, Damon, Chris, Alan? Otherwise, we can go to the next agenda item. And I know, Jeff, thanks for making time in your busy day to share this with us.
It's my pleasure. It's important, so it's my pleasure.
Awesome. Anything? Let's going once, going twice. Super. We're finally doing it. All right. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Catch you soon, bud.
See you again.
All right, so the next agenda item is spanning the business and technology divide. So Jerry, I'm on slide 7. Okay, good. So one of the other programming committee members is Courtney Kistler. So she led the vast majority of the technology organization when she was at Nordstrom. She was the head of the retail technology organization at Starbucks, and now she is head of platforms at Nike. And she's one of the most passionate advocates of getting talks where it's not just a technology leader, but it's really the technology leader co-presenting with the business sponsor or their business collaborator. And Damon, again, one of the things that you were so articulate about was that we don't want someone, like the business leader to say a couple words for a couple of minutes and then turn it over to a technology leader that they barely even know, right? We want the full-hearted, endorsement of them and saying, hey, we could not have done what we got done without this person. And so we've been attempting to do that. Our first attempt to do that was at DevOps Enterprise San Francisco in the US. And as great as that was, that included Key Bank, Nike, Capital One. I think we've done an even better job this year for the London conference. So briefly, in fact, maybe before I go there, Damon, you want to say a couple words on the motivation before I go into the specifics?
Sure. So the main point here is that nothing lives in isolation, right? So, you can automate the heck out of everything, but that doesn't really solve your problems. In fact, people find it's this mirage, right? We're always one more automation project away from our organization being successful. And then they realize when you look at the bigger picture, that really moving the bits around had very little to do with it. How the organization is structured, how people are incentivized, how they view their work, right? And how they're, kind of interact with all of these systemic forces around them is what causes these success or failures when it comes to how they deliver and how they work. And so a lot of that is driven by the business. How does the business fund things? How does the business structure things? How do they incentivize things? So we're like ignoring the largest force in the universe if we don't include that. So we've been trying to include more and more of these organizations where the business side has fundamentally understood the transformation. If you think about some of the luminaries that we hold up in our industry, like of the kind of new hip web way of doing things, like the Googles and the Facebooks and the Netflixes, it's a business position. They're all, why the technology comes out great the other end is because how the business views it, values it, sees it, how they organize. Their Netflix's freedom and responsibility is not a technology organization thing. It's a business level. It's a CEO level thing. So for this, we're trying to, really focus more on those patterns and bring them into this conversation so that people can understand the business and technology interaction and, what the business side is thinking and what works, what doesn't work, and provide just as much content to help people with that relationship as they go forward.
Yeah, and I'm so proud of our just the fact that we have such among the DevOps Enterprise speaker community, collectively we have those networks to be able to share those stories. So the 4 that I'm just really excited about in this domain are, one is a presentation from Verizon Enterprise. So anyone who's been following the DevOps Enterprise community probably knows Ross Clanton as one of the 2 people who led the DevOps initiative at Target, along with Heather Mickman. He's now a technical fellow at Verizon. So this is a group that involves him. So the presenters are John Scott, who works for Ross Clanton, as well as Sanjeev Jain, the CIO of Verizon Enterprise EMEA. But the really interesting, unique part of this presentation is being co-presented by Oliver Cantor, who is the Associate Director of Product Strategy. And he's going to be essentially bragging about how Verizon Enterprise was first to market around this offering, how if you're a store in a mall, often you would have to wait, say, 6 weeks to get your leased line installed. And so the nature of this offering is that they'll actually use the in-mall Wi-Fi to provide them service, and then they'll gradually provision in the pieces until they're all, transitioned entirely to a leased line. And so essentially he'll be bragging about how they have this lock on the market that was enabled by this entirely new way of working. So this is the profit and loss owner of this product that is selling into enterprises all around EMEA. So I think that's great. Nike, thanks to Courtney Kistler, we have the duo of Randy Lyons, who is the technology leader for EMEA for direct-to-consumer, co-presenting with Michelle Power, the CFO of Nike Direct EMEA. So at first I thought CFO meant sort of like a back office kind of finance function, but in the Nike parlance, CFO means the profit and loss owner. And so they'll be talking about how they've been able to win in the marketplace because of this unique partnership. And it is a partnership as opposed to maybe the old way of doing things. Interestingly enough, they will be presenting earlier in the day against Adidas. And, so they'll be talking about their transformation there. So I just, that's really delightful to see. Capital One, a lot of us know Topa Pal, a technical fellow at Capital One. This is a presentation by Amy Bechtel, who works in the engineering organization, and John Schmidt. He's the director of product management. And so they'll giving a talk on the mutual dependent relationship between product management and the engineering functions, and how I think the presentation title is Lessons Learned as a Reluctant Product Manager. So I think the goal is to teach our community how to bring reluctant product managers along. And it's just I got a chance to talk to them, and this is going to be another I think will go down in the books, I hope, is one of the best presentations in DevOps Enterprise. And then, of course, we have Mr. Chris Hill from Jaguar Land Rover. Chris, I had made the claim that you're finding yourself in one of the more strategic programs across all of JLR. Tell us about that, and any opinions you have on the people we put you alongside.
Yeah, so the people that you put me alongside, I think that maybe you're setting the bar very high for me. I think that and I'm honored to come and speak about our DevOps transformation. And back to your first question, the strategic program that I'm involved in specifically right now is our new iPace, and that is our battery electric vehicle, the first ever that we've ever launched. We've been challenged to not only change the game from a powertrain perspective, from a combustion engine perspective, but also from a technology perspective as well. And there has always been a high amount of friction between traditional automotive companies and really setting a example or being an industry leader with technology. It just seems like technology always moves significantly faster than our vehicles. One interesting point right now is if you get into one of our vehicles, let's say one of our Range Rovers from last year, the user interface that was designed for the infotainment system was actually designed 4 years ago, right? When you think about how long that lag time was and that lead time was versus maybe an app on your phone that was just designed yesterday, you can see that there's a wealth of opportunity for us to improve. So I'd like to say that my thought leadership in that department and my vision for how to close that gap brought me to where I am today.
I've read about the Jaguar iPace program, and I love this quote from Ian Hoban, Jaguar's vehicle line director, and he was talking about in this article it was critical for this brand to have a first crack to beat the German manufacturers. They're passionate about the technology. We want to show that's not a concept car. It's something you can actually buy and relate to. And he was talking about the importance of the infotainment system as a enabler of that. Chris, can you talk to that?
Sure. The first one, I told Ian that you liked his quote so much that you pointed it out to me, and I asked if I could use it in my talk, and he said okay. So I did get permission in that regard. But he's exactly right. You know, the established competition, it has really been a race to beat Tesla. And one thing that I really like about Tesla is they had an opportunity to build technology and start modern. Whereas a lot of the other automotive companies, us included, have a tremendous amount of legacy. When you have a tremendous amount of legacy, being first to market is so hard, or even second to market or third to market is really hard. And in this case, we are second to market. That is very abnormal for JLR, to be honest. But I would like to say that some of the difference in bringing on modern principles and establishing a software capacity within JLR have brought us to a position where we can actually be competitive. There are some things that we are going to do in the I-PACE that I am going to reveal in my talk, so I don't want to give away too much. But from an infotainment perspective, we have to change the game, if that's enough of a hint for you.
Yeah, awesome. And in fact, one last question before I let Damon, Alan chime in is one of the things I just love about your story is the fact that you took a risk to get there, right? I mean, you lived very close to me here in Portland, Oregon, and you moved your entire family to Midlands in the UK to do this. Can you tell a little bit about that part of the journey, what it felt like, and what the opportunities that opened up to you?
Yeah, so initially I was about 50-50 on the decision, but my wife said, we've never lived in Europe. Let's just take the opportunity and let's get over there. What really put me over the edge eventually was I realized that wealth of opportunity that I mentioned before, some departments didn't know anything different than 3-month developer feedback loops. When you've got people that are essentially operating in something of a practice that was 10, 15 years old, you realize you can really make a difference and you can really create a lot of value. That was one of the things that encouraged me to say, you know what, I am okay moving my family of 4. I had a 8-month-old with me on the airplane and a 2-year-old. And we did move all 4 of us over here to the UK because I realized that how much value that I could create for all of the organizations was going to go a lot farther rather than remaining in Portland, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and just to confirm, and that allowed that to help contribute to getting involved in the I-PACE program and so forth. Was one of the unexpected outcomes, or one of the things that there's a link you can draw from that to where you find yourself now?
Yeah, so starting out, we only started with a couple of projects, and I'm going to go into this on my talk too, but we never really tested, I guess, us operating in a DevOps fashion in or at scale until we hit infotainment. Now, infotainment, you're always focused on the lead vehicle, and you're focused on ensuring that that lead vehicle actually gets all of the features we plan to deliver for it. Well, for the I-PACE, for the introduction of something new in terms of we're doing battery electric, we actually, because of the DevOps principles that we put into our workflow, had enough throughput that we could actually think and be creative and come up with something new that we were going to put into the I-PACE. So the links in terms of, I knew I was going to be a part of infotainment. I didn't realize I was going to be a part of a essentially revolution, something we've never done internally within our business is very transformational.
Oh, that's awesome. So suffice to say, I am really excited about your talk, and I'm really excited for you. I'm just delighted and to see where this journey is taking you. Damon, Alan, any questions for Chris?
Damon, I'll go if you don't mind. So, Chris, I mean, this sounds like a fantastic talk. I definitely want to make sure I catch that. But there's so much kind of DevOps goodness in this whole concept of what he's doing here. You know, we talk about DevOps or die, and what drives DevOps. People don't do DevOps because it's nice to do or they want to be cool. They do DevOps because they have to, right? And Chris, your story here is dead on, right? You're dealing with, it's not the usual unicorn, but it's a unicorn nonetheless, Tesla, right? And they have a green field. They don't have any, legacy to worry about, so it's easy for them to, quote unquote, innovate. But when you're talking about taking on the BMWs and the Audis and the Mercedes and the Japanese and everything, look, it's a race to the finish line. No pun intended. And the fact that you're using DevOps types of practices and winning, right, is the kind of thing that I think we see it does, right? Yeah, we want to hear about failures. We want to hear that it's not easy and it can be hard, but we also want to hear that there's light at the end of the tunnel. So fantastic. It sounds like it's going to be a fantastic talk. I'm really looking forward to it.
Damon.
I can't. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
Well, I can't wait. And I did want to tell Alan that car puns are pretty exhausting, so be careful with those.
Damon, you good? All right. Thank you, Chris. So super lineup around the spanning the business technology divide. And man, by the way, the fact that you actually got to talk to Ian Hovar, that's I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Awesome. All right. So let's talk about the next one. And Chris, by all means, opine on this as well. So just a brief story on this. Jason Cox, Director of Systems Engineering at Disney, who we know very well in the DevOps Enterprise community for essentially 4 years in a row from the beginning. He said to me after each conference, great conference, but really great conference for developers, and not as good for operations. And I think by the fourth time I heard that in the fourth year, we decided to do something about it. And so we actually created a programming subcommittee. We actually reserved all the a good portion of the talks just for next generation operations and infrastructure concerns. And so Damon is leading that along with Jason Cox, Cornelia Davis. And I have to say, it is, in hindsight, I mean, clearly this is reshaping the conference programming. In fact, I would say that this has an awesomely disproportionate share of the programming, and I couldn't be happier about it. Damon, do you want to talk a little bit about the motivations for this and maybe your thoughts about the journey and the outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of called an open secret of the DevOps movement, especially as DevOps has gone more kind of quote unquote mainstream. People found that there's organizational forces around them were hard to change. So because I think the development side of the house had kind of a 20 years of agile head start seeping into their heads, DevOps really kind of morphed to be very development centric, I guess you could say. Or I should say this: if you can't get the operations involved from day one, the people that took the reins and ran with it were often on the development side of the house. And so they focus a lot on the deployment pipeline and with the end goal of deployment, right? And what's kind of happened is the conversation really focused heavily upon that development side. How do we get from ideas to code through that pipeline, through testing, and deploy it as quickly as possible. But that forgets about the vast majority of the life cycle, which is, we have to operate this stuff 24 by forever. And a lot of things go on the operation side. And I think we're also finding that as these pipelines get to be more and more, a solved problem, really, table stakes, there's plenty of examples out there of how to do it. Pick one. People are finding that what's really their biggest constraint now is operations, right? It's the last mile problem. How do we get the environments provisioned? How do we maintain? How do we respond to incidents? That is, in a lot of places, is what's stopping these organizations. It's stopping these DevOps transformations from going all the way. And in a lot of times, it's a difference between the winners, the high performers and the just so-so performers, or people that had great success and didn't have a lot of success, is, can you get operations on board, and how is operations going to transform itself to fit into this new kind of DevOps lean way of looking at things. So with that in mind, and we've also noticed a lot of DevOps conferences are skewing towards the development side. We said, hey, what if we kind of started over from the operations perspective, right? From operations out to the rest of the world. What would that look like? Follow the same pattern, the experience reports, the expert talks, but think about it as ops towards dev, not dev towards, towards ops has become such the kind of the common way to look at things. So with that in mind, we started this experiment in London, which is, let's put together this initial track that is just that. People all seeing the world from deep inside enterprise operations, going through the same DevOps and lean mental transformations, and then figuring out how to transform from ops towards dev.
Yeah, and Damon, I got to tell you, it really changed my thinking. In fact, I'm such a believer in this. We kind of gave ourselves 2 years. All right, let's not come up with a program for just this conference, but let's line it up. Start thinking about stacking it in San Francisco and Vegas for the U.S. conference, and really give ourselves 2 years to help kind of frame what does the journey ahead look like. And the results are, I think, exciting to me. So we'll see at the conference. Damon, if you don't mind, what I'm going to do is kind of walk through the talks and kind of give just a pitch for each one. And I just think it shows how noteworthy it is. But before I do that, Chris, you want to opine on the problem statement, the validity? Do you not care because you're a fancy schmancy developer now?
So I think he makes some extremely good points. And when I first got over here to the UK, it was all about technology, the new tools and everything that we're using. What I really didn't anticipate was going to be such a big roadblock was the people. And he hit the nail on the head in terms of operationally, can you support this disruptive innovation? And I'm going to be honest, there are a fair amount of people who maybe could go out of their way to stop the change from actually happening. Not to say that they're not trying to protect at least what has already existed or maintain stability, but sometimes actually getting an organization to change requires more relationship building and culture differences than maybe you originally anticipate. So I think the points he's making in terms of how are people incentivized, how they view the way they work, job fulfillment. These are some very key investment points for us that we want to make with our people that weren't really the main focus before. So I think so I agree with all of them. It's not only technology, but it's people as well.
Excellent.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, good.
You're back.
Damon, if but I'm going to assume that you can hear me fine. Can you give me a thumbs up? Oh, okay. So of course we're going to have Jason Cox. I think he's now spoken at every DevOps Enterprise Summit. So he's one of our, in my mind, one of the leading thinkers of this. We're also having Jeffrey Snover, technical fellow at Microsoft talk. He actually gave a talk in 2015 that I think is one of the most astounding and amazing stories of transformation, period. Just because of the risks he took, the sacrifices he made to basically bring command line to Windows. And we thought that this would be a great way to anchor this and essentially share some of the lessons learned even since this 2015 presentation. Cornelia Davis, she's going to be sharing about how functional programming philosophies can next generation ops infrastructure and organizations. Many people might know my love of Clojure and now Haskell. You can see it's very much the same thing. So we asked her to look forward and say, how do these philosophies inform how we should be doing things in operations? Damon, I think you're one of the best people at telling the trials and travails of operations and the problems of tickets being passed back and forth. So you'll be helping frame the problem statement and what we can do about it, and everything should be self-service in operations. I think I'm delighted by is we have both Rob England, who is especially well known in operations in the ITIL community as the IT skeptic, and Jane Grawl, who is from the ITSM Academy and DevOps Institute. Should be talking about how to make ITIL your best friend, how we can not leave operations behind. Nick Funnell will be talking about the next generation platforms they've created at Barclays. Tom Clark this is his third time speaking in London about the platform journey at ITV, probably one of the best known brands in the UK. Damon, just because I think, tell us about John Rostarsky and Sean Norris. I think these are some of the most astonishing stories of what is happening in operations today.
Yeah, I mean, this is that example of dev towards ops, right? I mean, the enterprise is a big, complex place. It's talking about decades of success, and it's been found in technology platforms and the tools they're using, even different variations, right, of the same platforms. I mean, the Java web apps from one generation are totally different than the architecture used, the next year, and then going all the way back to, they even got some mainframes rolling in there and all kinds of fun. So, both John's talk and Sean's talk, two separate talks, are about how inside these heavily regulated, heavily legacy laden, enterprise operations organizations, how they're transforming themselves from the inside out, so they can make the operations move as fast as the development side and the business wants them to move. So, there's all kinds of your things you would expect of the cloud transformation, the cloud native technologies and all that coming in. But the reality is it's just kind of a fundamental rethinking of how they think and how they work and how they structure their organizations and the process they're going through to uplift the entire thing, right? Not the old fashioned kind of, we're going to have a special DevOps kind of carve or special Kubernetes, kind of carved out little world and call that victory. But no, how do we go into the common, the core of how we do operations and uplift the people and transform the organization and change how they work so they can get the most out of all that, all those new technologies.
Yeah, it's just, oh my gosh. John Ostrowski's quickly become one of my favorite case studies just because he Chris, sort of like you, right? He attended DevOps Enterprise in 2015. He presented in 2016 about how he radically transformed the operations of some of the core platforms of the entire organization and helped them achieve the digital 17 most strategic initiatives. By 2018, he's co-presenting with one of the heads of development and talked about how Beth Moody, the CEO of Key Bank, is now talking about DevOps as a critical way to win in the organization, and how they even got mentioned in a Mad Money segment.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a great example of how the best stuff comes from the audience, right? I mean, I met Sean last year in San Francisco, and he started telling me like, this is like, are you involved? I'm like, this is a story that needs to be told. It's in progress. It's kind of ongoing as it is. We're getting the sort of the in progress view of it, just like we did from the development perspective in some of the early experience reports. So it's the same thing. I mean, Standard Chartered Bank is a huge global bank. I mean, they don't have much of a presence in the U.S., but pretty much everywhere else they do. Key Bank is also a full pun intended, a key bank in the U.S. system. So kind of hearing them talk about it, and it really came from the audience, right? Their attendees who started talking to other attendees, and lo and behold, some really cool stuff is coming out of their operations.
One of the things that Sean will be talking about, I believe, you had talked to me about, Damon, that really caught my attention was, part of his philosophy is, how do you make sure that any service can be rebooted?
Right. Well, it's that simple thing. When you have thousands of people working on thousands of systems, I mean, literally, I'm not sure about Sean's, how they break things down, but you hear about some banks saying we have 1,000 different business lines, right? And, how do you make all of this how do you uplift all of that, right? What do? You can't just leave it all behind because it'll never be replaced, right? So, it was just a very methodical approach to saying, what do we have to start with? What is the table stakes across the board, right? And it's things like failover, right? And then restarts, right? Very simple things like that to say, how do we set a bar for the organization to say, let's figure out every system has to have, every service has to have this base level of capabilities, common vocabulary. We're going to start with the most basic verbs and let's get that going as an organization. And that kind of lets everybody know where they're at. Right.
Yeah.
And then there's the next one. And then let's go from there. I mean, it's funny because if you think about it from the operations perspective, deployment is often a third, fourth, fifth, sixth kind of concern, right? Which seems crazy if you think about it from the development side, which is like, deployment is the goal. It's the mirage. That's where we're all after, right? But you think about it from operations, who has to spend all the money and time and effort to keep all this stuff, keep the business open. Deployment is often like, yeah, that's not the highest level. That's not the biggest bang for our buck to automate. There's all these other things that we need to fix first that will really make this organization run better, and then we'll worry about deployment. It's kind of a crazy. It makes no sense to people who aren't deep in these enterprise operations organizations.
Yeah, I look at this population of talks, and I'm convinced that this is definitely going to shape the program in a way that we haven't seen before. So I'm hoping that this will be the first year where Jason says the program was as good for operations as it was for development, maybe even better. Chris,
well,
any thoughts?
I mean, before I go to Chris, I'd like to say one thing. I like the idea of thinking that, well, hey, you can sit in one set of tracks and think about it from dev towards ops, and then you can sit in another set of talks and think about it as ops towards dev, but be kind of bound by this common philosophy and common kind of shared techniques and shared learning. So we're all still in the same event and we're all still going back and forth. But you can think about it from different perspectives, because in these big sort of mega organizations, you need to think about it from those different perspectives. There's not just one perspective. Like, oh, we had 100 people in our organization, we got them all on a conference call, and we told them to do things differently. Like, that doesn't work in the thousands, that you have people you have in a global organization. So I like this idea of being able to jump back and forth, and kind of have different perspectives, but the same core set of knowledge. That makes sense.
Yeah, Chris, I'm going to ask you. Hopefully, you can see how this advances the program objectives and the attendee goals, as opposed to detracts from it.
Yeah, for sure. I was going to comment on what Damon's saying. Deployment doesn't get any attention. This is something that bothers me so much, and I don't know why. For some reason, we feel that an investment into deployment isn't worth it over everything else. And it's really frustrating, because that's one of the areas where you develop so much technical debt, right? What I've seen is essentially the lifespan of a 5-year product develops their deployment process in month 1 and just forgets about it. Like, doesn't continue to massage it, doesn't continue to improve it, doesn't continue to make it better until something breaks. They're kind of like, we got to fix that, Band-Aid it, and then move on so that we can focus on what else is higher priority. And it drives me absolutely crazy. And, I'm going to share a little bit on my talk about how we improve deployment, because I felt like it was so important. But when I do assessments of our throughput, deployment a lot of the time doesn't even show up as a bottleneck. So it's interesting, because not only is deployment getting deprioritized because investment makes sense to put in other areas, it doesn't always show up as what's slowing you down until it slows you down, until you're pulling the andon cord and you realize, crap, we forgot something, right? So how do you remain proactive in your deployment strategy, but how does your deployment strategy also mature as fast as your product? So this is something that really resonates with me, and I really think in better investments into deployment always pay tenfold later on as your product matures.
This is exciting, and I think that's something that we will uncover in the conferences to come. And that I think the first step is this next generation ops infrastructure track. And by the way, I just want to make a quick acknowledgement before we close, is that Damon mentioned something that, and Chris touched upon this, is that I think one of the things that I'm just so delighted by is just the constant scouting and searching that the programming community does, looking for these amazing case studies. And Chris, I think you're just a testament to, like, we're so delighted for you, and that you're going to be part of the programming. On slide 9, we have repeat speakers. We have Topo Brad-Powell, who's technical fellow at Capital One, who's presented again at every DevOps Enterprise Conference. Jonathan Fletcher, who's now full-time CTO at Hiscox, was promoted.
Well deserved.
Yeah, no kidding. Promoted twice over the last 2 years. He'll be presenting about his journey. Scott Prue, who's presented at every U.S. conference, is now presenting for the first time in London, also promoted numerous times, along with Erica Morrison, and again, repeat speaker John Smart, who's presented at every DevOps Enterprise London conference. So it is exciting that they're going to be continuing to share their journeys and talks about expertise we need. Holy cow, we have 3 PhDs. We have Dr. Richard Cook presenting. He's actually the person who's probably influenced John Allspaw, the famous John Allspaw's thinking the most over the last decade, and is now working with John Allspaw at Adaptive Capacity Labs, talking about a new way to think about operations. Dr. Nicole Forsgren, who I've had the pleasure of working with for years on the State of DevOps report, for 4 years done with Puppet, now with Google Cloud, sharing the latest knowledge from that research, and Dr. McKirsten talking about his work from project funding models to product funding models, CEO of TaskTop. So, just another glimpse of how we are drawing in the expertise that we need to help us achieve our goals. So thank you to the entire program committee. Damon, you've as a tireless member for the last and collaborator for the last many years from the beginning. Chris Hill, so glad that we're going to be hearing about your latest updates on your journey. And so we have, again, here's the information for the conference at events.itrevolution.com. And there is a promotion that we are doing, only a couple of days left. Use promo code FINISHLINE for £100 off the registration. So with that, I hope you've gotten a glimpse of what goes on to make this programming happen, some of the things that we're doing to help improve attendee outcomes, and 2 things I'm just very delighted by: the next generation ops and infrastructure track, and continued focus on spanning the business technology divide. Hey, you know what? Let's go. Any last words? Let's go Alan, Chris, Damon.
Sure. So, Gene, thanks for inviting me. It was fun listening, Chris. I'm really looking forward to your presentation. I won't miss it. I don't know if we mentioned June 25th, 26th of the date.
Oh, thank you.
Of the event in London, the £100 off with the code, and it's a great venue. So, and you know what? Finally, I'm going to be there doing actually a little different on the video this year. We're going to do some roundtables, but always looking to meet people and attendees, speakers. Come over, say hello. And
thank
Gene,
you, Alan.
thanks. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Chris.
Yeah, Gene, also I second that. Thanks for the invite, and I'm really looking forward to the conference. There's a surprise that I'm hoping to put into the foyer at the upcoming conference, which I won't reveal, but maybe it's obvious. But I look forward to not only the wealth of information that I will be able to gather here, but I also look forward to anyone else that I'm able to resonate with in terms of how their enterprise has transformed like ours. Like I said, since 2016, it's really been a journey for me, but also a dream. I feel like I found my home in an industry that I was really yearning for. Which I hope there are the same amount of aha moments I had on my first talk or my first summit that other people will experience this year. So really looking forward to it. Thanks, Gene.
Right on. No, thank you, Chris. Damon.
Yeah, I'm just second all that, and I want to say I'm excited to see everybody there, and I'm excited which new connections I'm going to make this year, and which new things I'm going to fill my head with.
And we'll see how this next gen ops track goes, Damon.
Oh yeah, and there's that.
It's going to be great.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, everybody. Alan, Chris, Damon. Catch y'all soon. And Jeremy, thanks for making all this happen.
Bye-bye.
See you all. Bye-bye. See you in London.